Hey, it's Toby from Heavyweight MMA here today, talking with one of the most savage fighters in Australian combat sport history, Adrian "The Pang." He's previously been Australian champ, title holder in XFC, CFC, Warriors Realm, and Legend Fighting Championships. Currently contract with ONE FC. Thanks for giving us your time today, mate.
No, thanks for having me on, and I've been looking forward to talking to you guys.
Yeah, it's been a while, man. Like it was a long time ago that I got to meet you and a few of the other Australian and New Zealand fighters that came over to Macau to compete in that Legend Fighting Championships. Can you talk about that at all? Like, how was that?
Yeah, I mean, that was good. Legend really looked after me when they first started off. You know, I got a lot of good publicity over there. Obviously, training in Kowloon when I used to do Kung Fu. I was sort of familiar with Hong Kong, and, you know, I had a traditional martial arts background before discovering MMA.
Yeah.
So, but back to Legend, you know, that was my first, not my first international promotion, but probably the biggest international promotion I'd fought for.
Yeah.
And I was their first Asia Pacific champion. I had some really huge, epic wars over there with some Korean fighters. Yeah, so that was a good experience. But, you know, that's like 10 years ago now when you look back on some of the records there.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned about the Kung Fu and everything, how you'd been in this sort of area, like around Macau and I imagine Hong Kong as well. There's like little hidden martial arts schools going on everywhere. Kung Fu with guys that have got long lineages in Kung Fu, and then even and in Macau and Hong Kong, there's also a lot of Thai boxing gyms, and it's linked to the local gangsters that use Thais as bodyguards, etc. It's quite an interesting.
Yeah,
place.
I mean, you know, Hong Kong's got a good history, you know, with Bruce Lee there, and I trained at Grandmaster Ipsoy's house. So he's a Southern Tong Long master. We lived in his house in Kowloon for a couple of weeks, slept on his floor.
Yeah.
You know, it was tiny. It was really dirty. There was no Westerners in the area when we used to stay there.
Yeah.
This is pre MMA, so you're looking like around the year 2000 sort of thing and earlier.
Yeah.
You know, training on the rooftops in Hong Kong, you'd see the other martial artists training on the rooftops, and just hearing about the history. You know, it was all a really good experience that got me where I am today, I reckon.
Must have been a bit of a spin out coming from Australia and going to that environment. So different feeling, right?
Mate, I had a few guys with me, other Australians with me, and like, it just felt like we were doing it tough. You know, it wasn't that tough, but, you know, it was cold. The Grandmaster used to smoke. It was really dirty.
Yeah.
You know, we're sleeping on the floor on sleeping bags. It was a bit rough, and but, you know, good experience.
And you said I saw another interview you were talking about. You said back in the day you even had Wong Fei Hong hair, man.
Fucking, I had it right down my back, like a full plait. You know, when I started Kung Fu, I thought that was, you know, the be all and end all. I wanted to be a Kung Fu master.
Yeah.
I never really didn't think I would ever fight. I didn't know where it would take me.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've used it in self-defense type situations, but when you're belting drunk people, it's not the same as fighting another trained combat athlete. And you know, I think MMA really is the ultimate combat sport, and it proves what works and what doesn't work. So, you know, I've got a lot of respect for Tong Long and traditional martial arts still. I think they have their place. But, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, man. So back when you kicked off into the Chinese Kung Fu, was that kind of your thinking because you have some Chinese heritage that kind of felt right that you would jump into that, or just by chance?
Nah, man. Like, I grew up in New Guinea. Obviously, I'm half Chinese. My father, you know, they used to do Kung Fu there, but it was very, we were very limited to our resources in New Guinea.
Yeah.
My brother and I used to just rent the VHS cassettes of Bruce Lee. We'd copy all his moves on each other. We had an ESPN channel in New Guinea, so we'd watch the boxing. So we'd box each other, but we had no official training. So when I moved to Australia, you know, I seeked down a good Kung Fu gym, and once I found one, you know, I just fell in love with it. I just did it nonstop. I just loved it so much, and that's what led me to MMA. You know.
And what would you say, like you talk about the benefits of traditional, et cetera, in a real fight sort of scenario, which obviously you're familiar with, what sort of elements, because there are some elements that work, what sort of elements would you say of the Kung Fu kind of would help to some extent, whether it's mixed with other things or whether it's something that is common to other styles, doesn't matter. But is there anything in particular you would say kind of works?
I think if you're a dedicated martial artist and you're a realist, you can go right. A lot of traditional martial artists think that they are the superior martial art, and if they hit you, they could kill you, and all this sort of rubbish. And it's not true at all. You got to evolve with the times. My kung fu mates now, when they see me win, they try and attribute it to some sort of kung fu training. But at the end of the day, mate, if I didn't go and learn MMA, if I didn't go learn how to box, how to wrestle, how to do jiu-jitsu, I don't think any traditional martial art on its own is effective enough to beat all styles. Yeah.
Yeah. What about like the other benefits of like traditional or those sort of holistic martial arts that touch on a lot of different things, like not just about fighting, about different things like morals and blah blah blah.
That is a good point. I do appreciate with that, like the traditional martial arts. It's about health, especially with kung fu. Like my old master, it wasn't about if you can just break somebody, you got to be able to fix them as well. So he's actually a Chinese medicine healer sort of thing. Yeah. So that's the yin and yang. You got to be able to destruct somebody, but you got to be able to fix them. And with traditional martial arts, most of it, it makes you pretty humble. You don't walk around being a big head if you are a competent martial artist. Yeah. So it definitely has a lot of benefits. I got my son. I started my son in Taekwondo when he was a bit younger. He's 12 now. He does competitive judo. And I just think it's great. I love watching him train. I love watching him learn, that such an old sport that's still an Olympic sport, and all the discipline and stuff that goes along with it.
Yeah. Talking to Cameron Quinn a few weeks back, and he was talking about that balance, that because you think about like MMA and boxing and kickboxing, it's all real external, right? Like it's all hitting hard as hell and very aggressive and physical. And then there's also that other side, like when you think of some of the Kung Fu sides doing like the Qigong and Tai Chi and all that, I think that sort of stuff would probably balance a bit with all that external stuff you've been doing. And it's something you can actually do as you get older, because you can't continue at that full external yang sort of pace for your whole life, right?
Yeah, no, I get it. And when I did Tonglong, we used to do a bit of Qigong, which was like it's meant to be like an internal armor, makes you strong inside. So I do see the benefits of that. Saying that, man, like, I'm an MMA athlete and we do thrash each other a lot. But as I'm getting older, I'm starting to appreciate Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the gi a lot more. There's more gripping. You can't thrash around as much, so you can sort of hang on to people a lot more. Whereas with no gi, it can get quite aggressive and people can thrash around regardless of skill level. So I feel as I get older, I'll start valuing my gi training a lot more and probably immerse myself in that when I can't be as competitive with my young boys anymore.
That's it. And you can still keep a hold of your young fella, even if he's getting stronger than you later on, right?
Yeah. I mean, like I've been really cautious not to push my son too much. I don't want him. A lot of fathers push their kids in the wrong way. Like they want them to be everything that they weren't, maybe. So I've always made training fun with him. I never forced him to do it. If he doesn't want to do it, I won't force it. He loves his judo. I'm not there trying to teach him how to do jiu-jitsu or, I just guide him and give him support. And hopefully if he wants to take it further, I'll be able to back him all the way.
Yeah. I think I noticed his name. Is it Xi'an or something, his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed the Chinese name. I've actually got half Chinese family as well. So, got a couple little kids.
I named him after the Xi'an, the Terracotta Warriors.
Yeah.
But, it used to be one of the capital cities of China, obviously. It was the beginning of the Silk Road. A lot of history in that name. So, it was a fitting name. I thought of it. My wife loved it. So, we didn't even debate over it. We're both in agreement. So, it's a cool name.
Yeah, that's cool. Hey, just a quick question: did you and your brother learn any Chinese language, or just language from Papua New Guinea?
Man, we spoke Papua New Guinea, and obviously my father speaks Cantonese. My Chinese grandmother used to try and teach us. They did it tough in New Guinea. Like, there was a little bit of racial elements there still. Like when my father married my mum was obviously a European.
Yep.
And a lot of the Chinese, they didn't really accept us fully because we were half caste, you know. Yeah. And that was on both sides, you know. That was on the Asian side, and that was also on the European side because my father was Asian. Yeah, we weren't really accepted as well on that side either. And you know, most of my brother and I's friends were all native Papua New Guineans, still are, and that's the culture we immersed ourselves in more so than the Chinese culture. Unfortunately, that's how it was.
Yeah, no, I understand. And that kind of takes me to what I wanted to drift down is your history in Papua New Guinea, because obviously you mentioned in other interviews and just now that you were born in Papua New Guinea, and I heard you also mention how it was such a beautiful place, like that beautiful natural place, had beautiful natural resources, etc. But then on the duality of it is that it can be a hostile, violent sort of environment.
Oh man, yeah. It's cool, man. Like I was born in Kokopo in a place called Bunapopi. So it's a volcano town. So it's in Rabaul.
Yeah.
The whole town is in an extinct caldera, so an extinct volcano.
Wow.
Was known as one of the most beautiful harbors in the Pacific. 1994, we had a huge eruption, wiped out the town.
Yeah.
Everyone was escaping out of town, and my dad was driving into town with all these boys trying to rescue houses because the sulfur ash is really corrosive.
Yeah.
So they would every day they go in and scrape off roofs and all the metal stuff. And you know, eventually when the volcano stopped, you know, the town was empty, and my dad had salvaged all these houses, and he bought a lot of real estate when it was cheap.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's getting sidetracked. You know, like the war was we had all the wars through there.
Yeah.
There's like Japanese tunnels just littered all through Papua New Guinea.
Yeah.
We used to walk up the beach. We used to play in the tunnels. We got photos of us wearing military helmets. You could just find them in the bush. Wow. Old steel guns, bullet heads, huge cartridges, shells that we used to put our brooms in, like broom holders.
Yeah.
Mate, you name it. I mean, the place was just untouched. There's dolphins swimming in the ocean.
Yeah.
There's just every sort of marine life you can think of. It is really beautiful, mate, but it's like sometimes it's kill or be killed there. So, you know, we used to fight a lot. It was pretty common. If you don't defend yourself, like in the wild, mate, if you're weak, you can't defend yourself, well, then you'll just get eaten by bigger predators. So that's how it was in Papua New Guinea. And, you know, my father would have to defend himself when the natives would get drunk in the shops. And, yeah, man, we had a really good life. I got a few scars on me to remind me of my life there. And, yeah, man, I'm grateful to be where I am today.
So in that environment, it was kind of like a natural environment. You guys were kind of free. Were you doing things like, you know, getting out in the bush, hunting, fishing, all that sort of stuff?
Hey, everything. My dad used to, because it's funny now, like we had no couch or like a lounge room couch thing. So we just had lino on the floor and a carpet, and my mum sewed all these huge pillows on the floor, which was our couch.
Yeah.
But when you don't know any different, it didn't matter to us. We had a little floor fan that we would have to lay in front of to get eggs. You know, Papua New Guinea is really hot.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dad used to say, just get outside, don't come back till it's dark. So we used to just go troppo up there, man. We could go fishing. We get on the boats, go canoe out to the islands. We'd go exploring in the tunnels. Yeah. You know, you imagine nowadays if you let your kids go adventuring in some tunnels a few kilometers down the beach, you couldn't do it.
Yeah.
We just fucking do whatever we wanted as long as we came back and didn't get into trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, things are kind of changed.
Back and we've been one time, so I got smashed on the head with a rock and I had blood all over my face, and we had to go and clean it all up in the salt water because we live on the beach. Yeah. Because my dad just get angry. He never wants to hear you complain about anything. Yeah. He's like, just fucking do it. Don't go and tell me about any problem until you sort it out. So yeah, man. We really loved it up there.
Yeah. So, and And you've mentioned before about some of the tribal elements, etc. Even as a young kid, I'd imagine you're exploring around the place that you're going to have some little issues here and there with different groups, etc. Did that sort of thing happen when you're a little fella as well?
Man, that happened all the time. Like we were right in the middle of two villages, and they got all young fellas up and coming as well, and everyone's, in Papua New Guinea, the kids become men a lot younger. Like a young kid can go and hunt his own food, make his own fire, cook his own food.
Yeah.
In the Western world, kids can't look after themselves. They just freaking can't. And so I don't like to harp on fighting all the time, but it was just common. Like if we played footy against the kids from the next village up, it would always end in the all-out brawl, and you'd be punching one guy and one guy hits you in the back of the head. The next minute they're throwing sticks. Some guys got catapults. I've got some really crazy stories from up there, and but that was just normal, mate. Like you wouldn't go out scared or feeling bullied or any of that bullshit. That was just life, mate. If you just had to know how to look after yourself, and if you couldn't, you just had to find the best possible solution.
Yeah. And so go into it a bit, man. Like tell us any of the stories that stick out in your mind, any of the big confrontations or brawls that you've had that kind of come to mind.
Man, I've got this spear mark on my arm. I know a lot of legend used to. I'll see if I can get it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see that. It's like this.
Just point to it. Point to which part.
It's like right there. It's hard to see.
Yeah, anyway, I can see.
It's like a spear-shaped mark where I got hit with a spear once, sort of covering my head, and a half cut my fucking arm open. And I got one in my back where I got hit with something as well. And mate, if I had to tell you a story, if we have time, probably my best one is a guy called Denson. He's a good Papua New Guinean friend of mine. One day we were all drinking at the table, and I just had shorts and a singlet on, and they came out and, they over embellished it. They're like, oh, bro, like in our language, like they killed Denson, which means they just bashed him. And I was like, fuck. So we ran next door. There was like a Filipino bar there, but it was all just like natives there.
Yeah.
And it was really rough. Like white people, they don't go there. So this is Kokopo, man. So there's no lights, there's no street lights, there's no curbs, stuff like that. It's bush. So we ran next door, and I had a pair of nunchucks that I used to tuck in my pants because
just carry them around just in case.
They fight with bush knives. So if you're there, you'll get my heaps of my friends have been hacked before.
Yeah.
Anyway, we went over, and my mate Denson, who's still we're some of the best of friends today. He reckons I saved him, but he had this. You could see the bone through the side of his head where they hit him with a bit of, it's called karanas, which is just dried reef. And they just mistook him for someone else from another village. So they belted him, and we stood there, and like I speak Papua New Guinea really well. So I kind of organized it, and he said, oh, that was the guy. So we said, okay, 1-on-1, let them fight. So they're belting each other, and, it was Denson already had this big cut here. So there was a lot of blood, and he started getting it over him. And next minute, all these villagers, you can hear them go, uru, 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 which means they're pulling a blade. And you could hear that sound, that shing, when they're yanking them out of the back of their trucks. And then it was fucking terrifying. Like, half my mates ran because no one was, because if they're going to chop you, man, they're going to chop you. There's no like court or police case. If they go to the village, no one's going to know who did it. So I'm like, I have my hands like, no, like God, fair. Like I'm trying to calm it down. And next minute, it was just fucking, there was rocks being thrown. I pulled out these nunchucks and I'm swinging them like this. And I just made sure I never hit anyone in the head because I didn't ever want to cause anyone major damage. But that's the first time I've full pelt slammed people in the arms and body with these nunchucks. And mate, the sound is, I wouldn't know how to replicate the sound. But anyway, we ran up this thing and we ran up this driveway where you come down into this area, and it was just fucking, there was bottles being thrown, and I'm just swinging these chucks in like a figure eight to keep them at bay. Because if they're swinging anything, as long as you're swinging it at them, they'll stay away. And I belted quite a few boys, so we're all lined up. Next minute, you hear, boom, and this big pump goes. The cops are across the road, so everyone freezes. And there's a cop on the other side of the road, and he's pointing this gun. The cop walks over and he goes, hey, he's breaking up the fight. And we're speaking in pidgin, and they're saying that I was using a chain because they didn't know what it was. They said, oh, and I was just saying, no, I was like, I'm not using a chain. So, I chucked it already. When the cops came, that's when all my boys almost like they appeared out of the bush because they fucking were hiding because it was bad. And I spoke to this copper and native policeman. And he's like, "Oh yes, you James Pang's son," because they all know my dad. I'm like, "Yeah, Bimangi." Like, I'm from Timbur, like that's our area. And I said, about the fight, and I said, "You guys stand there with the pump, and we all fight 1-on-1 until no one can fight anymore." And he goes, "No, I'm very sorry, but this is against the law to condone this kind of violence." And then he was thinking, he goes, because it's nighttime, right? No one's around, man. There's no phones and cameras and shit. And he's like, "Here's the copper." "Yes, okay, we'll do it." So then old mate has his pump in case anyone gets out of control. And as soon as he's the copper condoned us to fight, all the other guys just sat down, like not to be derogatory, but it's like a monkey subservient thing. Like when monkeys bow down to other monkeys, they squat right down.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen it? So
I haven't, but yeah.
Yeah, like if a monkey's bowing down, they'll squat down like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which means that it's a passive thing. Like anyway, that's what happened, mate. The fight, the fight didn't eventuate. Obviously, no one got caught. My mate had his fucking half his head hanging out because his huge scar down the side of his eye today.
Yeah.
If that was here, man, everyone go to court and there'd be all this shit. But, mate, he just went, we just had to go on as normal. We had to wait till the next day for the hospital to open. I took him up, got his face sewn back together.
Yeah.
He lay there half the night with half his skull hanging out his head.
And
that's probably one of the wildest brawls we've had up there and the closest I've come to being chopped with a knife, I reckon.
So in that situation, or when you're hanging around, you're generally carrying something. Like you said, you're carrying nunchucks, man. Do you normally carry anything, or it's just like a chance?
It was there because it was nighttime, mate. You don't go outside your own gates without something on you. My brother's in New Guinea now, and everyone's got pistols now. You can get licensed firearms because you have to. There's a lot of carjackings and murders up there.
Yeah,
but mate, if we went hunting in the bush, like everyone carries bush. When you see the natives walking around, they carry ponoks, like slingshots around their neck, like a necklace, and they all carry bush knives because that's just a hunting tool. So, these guys are ready to hunt at any time, which means they're also ready to defend themselves at any time as well. So, man, I wouldn't carry nunchuck in my car. I used to carry them, and we all carry bush knives, but that's like a standard thing that everyone does.
And what's the worst sort of injuries you or your brother have had in all these little brawls that you've been involved in?
Mine is just that big chop in my arm. That's probably the worst I've had. My brother's got one right across his forehead. Looks like a boomerang. He got knifed right across his head. It's like a little V shape. It's quite big actually, and that'd be his biggest one as well, I guess. But compared to what our friends have had, mate, it's mild compared to what my mates have got.
Yeah. Sounds pretty hectic. And then, so you were around the age of 13 when you went to Australia. And what was it like? What's the change like? I mean, coming out of one very different environment were you into the Gold Coast of Australia, or where did you?
No, we went to Brisbane, man. Everything, man. Like really nice, clean air.
Yeah.
So many amenities. Like we loved it. Australia, it's such a beautiful country.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people want to come here. I guess that's why I never left.
Yeah.
We came here for high school, and I used to go back every school holidays to New Guinea, like most New Guinea boarders do. Yeah. And then, when school was over, I decided to stay. I started training Kung Fu, obviously. Yeah. For some reason, I thought that was just going to be my life. I never considered how I was going to make money off it or anything. I just loved it so much. That's all I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so it's probably one of the reasons I originally stayed here.
Yeah.
And I guess we can get into that later about that's what made me start fighting and got me to where I am today.
So you're just talking about getting into training, and it's kind of a bit of a common theme that people just find something. Like the guys I've started to talk to, been fortunate enough talking to guys like yourself and some other lifelong martial artists and fighters, and it's kind of funny to see these common elements. And so far, the things I'm starting to find is they just find it and it feels like right to them, And then the intensity of training and the persistence of training is what sets you guys apart from like your normal person. Like someone else might find something and do it once a week or something, but some of you guys will find like a karate school, kung fu, boxing, whatever, and be going like 7 days a week, 4 hours a day, and like nonstop. That's all they're focused on. They just know it's right for them.
Mate, it's nonstop. Like I got into a fight. I was in grade 10. I got into a fight with this grade 12, and I got my eye busted open. And the next week, I was on a thing called work experience here, and I was in Chinatown, in Brisbane, Chinatown. And I'm walking through the mall of Chinatown, and there's a school. It's called Malcolm Su Kung Fu School, and I don't know. It's not I think it's in Perth now, but they were the biggest kung fu school in Brisbane at the time. And like, there's these huge temple dogs at the front, a huge stairs to this fucking grand palace, like temple doors.
Yeah,
like real. It's almost like walking into the Shaolin Temple. You know, I opened the doors. I've got this patch on my eye. There's fucking chain bars, sandbags, like it's the full Shaolin Temple. I'm like, holy fuck. And the instructor there is funny, man. I'll never forget. He's like, if you sign up today, you'll never lose a fight again in your life. And I was like, yep, I'm signing up. And I went back to school. I told all my friends I found this kung fu fucking temple school. You know, I dragged most of them along. Only one stayed with me. We did it like non-stop, man. Like, we used to catch a bus. We'd even wear our uniform on the bus. It was kind of ridiculous when you think about it now. And we'd wear our uniform in the bus, and we'd train all fucking night. We'd catch a bus back home. Like, man, it's all I wanted to do. And I went over to Perth to their headquarters. I did a lot for them. And yeah, mate, that was what I found my passion in. And I trained really hard. And I honestly believed that no one would ever beat me again until I had an MMA fight.
I find it kind of walk into that environment, it kind of makes it mystical too, right? Like, you've been seeing these movies like you mentioned, and then you see this place like, wow, I'm learning this real Oriental art. Yeah, it's like pretty cool. I've trained a little bit at a place in Chinatown in Sydney before with a guy called Chan Chuk Fei, who was quite a famous guy in the early days of full contact kung fu and kickboxing, whatnot. Adam White trained under him at some points as well. And it's very, it's an interesting feeling going to these Chinese gyms, right?
Man, it was unreal. Like they had these chain bars that you'd hit with your arms, and these sandbags you'd smash. And it was just like, they were like training an army, mate. And, you know, you learn all the weapons, and you know what, thinking back, it was just a money maker. Like every grading was a new uniform, a new weapon. You're always paying money, but fuck, man, I just loved it so much. And you know what? Some of my lifelong friends are still from there. Some aren't, you know. It's typical, man, in any sport. When you're winning, everyone wants to be your friend. When you're losing, you don't really hear from too many people. So it's a really good way to find out who's got your back. But yeah, mate, Kung Fu is definitely my roots. And I had my first fight. I had not done MMA when I had my first MMA fight. And that was an eye-opener too. So
that's what I actually wanted to jump to. I was listening to your story, and it just made me laugh that first of all, you said you had the Wong Fei Hong hair, you cut it off, it's sticking up, and then you're going into this fight, never even having hit pads before, jumping in the ring with this guy. And then, like you mentioned, I'm trying to kung fu him and it's not working. It was just, it made me laugh.
It's nuts. Well, the promoter's like, no, you can't have long hair. And I love my fucking Chinese hair. I thought I'd have blades, you know, for kung fu, you could tie little blades on it, and there's like, you could, you know what, man, it's all in the past. So I was like, fuck it, I'll cut it off. Cut off my hair. So then it just goes, nyak. So I looked like I had my hair perm, but I didn't give a fuck. And then we fought in the arena, and it was like this old gladiator pit in the valley. And mate, I'd never been in a boxing ring. I didn't do jogging. I hadn't done boxing pads. I done kung fu, you know, and I believe I was pretty good at kung fu. And I brought a lot of students to my original seafood when I left Malcolm Su. I trained under Paul Brennan. Yeah. And man, fuck, I fought this little MMA. I was 60 kilos back then. Like, that's just puny. And but I thought I was a heavyweight, you know, like in my head, the kung fu just trained you to have this belief. Yeah. That's probably not warranted in a lot of cases. And anyway, mate, like I come out with him, and I was like, wow, I was hitting with like 5 or 6 kung fu chops.
Chops, you fully did chops.
And he's
That's
like
awesome.
still standing there. I thought, holy fuck, he's not dead. And
Yeah.
then I'm like, so then I just start punching him, because it's you see it in a lot of things, man. Like for example, you know, you might see boxers boxing and then they end up wrestling each other when they can't get a good strike on each other, because your natural instinct comes out. And yeah, anyway, mate, I was trying to do kung fu. I was trying to punch him. I didn't know how to box properly. He was getting me in a Thai plum. He's kneeing me in the head. I had no idea what that was.
Yeah.
One point I've grabbed him and I've headbutted him. The ref stops. He's like, no headbutting. We're like, okay. Continue. It was called no rules fighting back then as well.
Yeah.
It was not yet called MMA. So this is in 2001.
Yeah.
And mate, we just went back and forth. And right near the end of the round, I've got him on his back. So he's on his back, I'm on top, and I'm punching down over him, and his head is bouncing off the canvas. Yeah, bouncing, bonk, bonk. He's swinging his legs around, catches me in what's called a triangle, but I didn't know what it was. So I'm caught in this triangle. I'm thinking, what the fuck is this? And I've pulled out this way, which is the wrong way if I had known. I'm thinking, oh, it's tighter. And then I pulled out again the wrong way, and I got sat down, tapped out. And I think it was like 10 or 13 seconds before the end of the round. And I was like,
no.
fuck. But I didn't know. And then all my kung fu mates were like, what happened? Like, because they didn't know what the fuck that was either, you know. I was on top. Next minute, the fight was over. So they didn't get it.
Yeah.
And then, you know what? The majority of them, fucking, I never spoke to again, because they're pieces of shit.
Wow.
And I went out the back, mate. I had a cut here. I had a cut here. I've spewed everything I ate that day up. My opponent was exactly the same. His coach came he was out the back, face bust, he's spewing his guts up. And my opponent never ever fought again, because we both had near-death experiences that day. And it was wild, mate. The crowd loved it.
Yeah.
So where was I? Yeah, so, you know, obviously it was on a Thai boxing show, and they must have just thought, what the fuck are these guys doing? You know, when I was warming up with kung fu, and they would have thought, man, what are these guys doing? And mate, I was busted up. This is where I met my sports doctor when he first stitched me. Dr. Saul Geffen, and he looks after me today, mate, with my injuries and stuff.
Yeah.
He's really cool. He literally just cleared off this dirty table out the back, said, lay down, Pangy, and he started stitching my. There was no like medical sanitary conditions, man. This is like fucking as raw as it gets. And man, so yeah, I mean, you know, my Sifu, he had my wallet and my keys, and he took off. Obviously, we got a hold of him, and he come up to me, and I was busted up, and you know, I just been beaten, and he just told me I got to choose what I want to do. And you know, I was his first student. I brought a lot of students from another gym to him. We're from Malcolm Sue to him, helped him start his school. I was normally the first one at the school to arrive, always the last to leave. He said, choose. And I said, you know, Sifu, how could someone be on their back, swinging their legs around and get me? Like, I thought I had him. Like, I don't know what that is. And I feel I should learn what it is, so I know how to defend it next time.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, you have to choose. And I was like, well, I choose that. So he gave me my keys and my wallet. He said, see you later, son, because he used to call me son.
Yeah.
And then we didn't speak again for, I don't know, a couple of years, I think. I left all my weaponry at his school. And literally the next week, mate, I went and found a boxing gym, walked in, had my face busted, told them I wanted to fight. They said, oh, yeah, you can go down there and skip. I said, no, I actually want to train with the fighters. And, you know, they're like, oh, what experience do you have? I'm like, well, I've done Kung Fu. So you can imagine. When someone says that now, you're like, oh, fucking hell. But, mate, my coach was cool, man. He was accepting. I trained with some boxers and kickboxers. One of them is my best mate still, Blair Studley. He owns Nitro Boxing. He took me to my first boxing and Thai boxing fight. And, mate, we'd have to box spar, then we'd have to kickbox spar. Then at the end of it, we'd all put on these MMA gloves and they had to MMA spar me. So, man, it was a good team. It was a real good learning experience. You know, I thank that guy, John, who beat me in that MMA fight. You know, perhaps if I had won, I wouldn't have made the step quicker to get where I am.
Yeah.
So, I went and I started learning jiu-jitsu. I went and started learning boxing. I started jogging. I learned Muay Thai, because a lot of Kung Fu, they don't believe in too much kicking, and you have a wider horse stance, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, hey, 20 years on, I'm still evolving. I'm still learning. I'm never, people get way too content thinking they know enough, and you can't stop evolving.
Yeah. And back in those days, I'm imagining you didn't have any gyms that integrated everything together like your gym now. Integrated MMA has everything, right? Back then you had to piece it together. So you're going to boxing, you're doing kickboxing with some kickboxers, you're working at a BJJ school or whatever else you feel like you need to integrate, right? It's not something that's together like it is now, yeah?
They had nothing. Like, the highest jiu-jitsu belt in Australia was a purple belt. Apart from in Melbourne, there was Peter DeBean and John Will were the only black belts in Australia. The Brazilians weren't here yet.
Yeah.
So, I'm like opening the phone book, looking down, and it had to be, because I'd seen the UFC, it had to be Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, because I didn't know what the difference was. So it just had to be Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. And mate, I used to drive up to near the sunny coast to train. And you know what? I found a guy called Darren McKean. He was a jiu-jitsu Gracie purple belt. Down in Mount Gravatt. So I used to travel about 40 minutes each way to travel with him.
Yeah.
And that's when my jiu-jitsu journey began. He was a really good instructor, really accepting. Man, fuck, I competed in jiu-jitsu. I used to win all my tournaments. I went down the Pan Packs. I came third in the Pan Packs. So yeah, man, I've done a lot.
Yep. And also you mentioned in other interviews about a bit of Thai boxing. I remember there were some links to you with NTG before. Did you train a bit with them?
Mate, I went to Nugget. Like, I went through my career. I'm sponsored by Fairtex in Thailand. I've fought in Thailand and stuff. And I think before then, I had a really bad year and of winning and losing. Like, fuck, I had some good wins. Then I just had some real shitty losses. Like, I had some trauma in my face, and then I was fighting so close together. When I get hit, it would just swell up really quickly.
Yeah.
And, I never been knocked out in a fight. And, that first fight I tapped out, and in 40 something, I've never tapped out. I'm like, I'm going to do my best to learn not to have to fucking tap out again, Yeah. And, so yeah, man, I had this bad year, and my old manager, Tony Green, he's a really good friend and, a real good mentor to me. I met him after the same night I had my first fight. I met him because his brother was fighting on the same show.
Yep.
His brother, Mick Green, he's just a specimen of a man. Like, this guy was unbelievable, like, in the day he would have been UFC material.
Yep.
And, mate, he helped me with my strength program. He helped try to string it together and put us all together so that we could train. Saying that, man, I used to have to go to advanced boxing to do my boxing in Brendale. We used to go to Redcliffe to do our wrestling. I used to go to Mount Gravatt to do my jiu-jitsu. So that's going back to, there were no gyms around doing MMA. You had to go left, right, and center. You go to one gym first and you go to another gym later that night to learn the rest. So, but going back to that, mate, I had a bad year. Tony put me in touch with Nugget. And, Nugget is a famed Thai boxing coach, well-renowned in Australia. A little bit of an imposing figure if you don't know him. And fuck, mate, I swallowed my pride and I went into that gym. He knows I'm an MMA guy. I'm not a Thai boxer.
Yeah.
And I've had 6 or 7 Thai boxing fights, but mate, he accepted me, man. He didn't try and mold me into a Thai boxing style. And he learned MMA, what it was about, and wrestling. And fucking, I train with him every morning. And to this day, that was some of my best training sessions because we'd have big chats afterwards. He's a wise guy. He's been around a long time. Yeah. And I dedicate a lot of my Thai skill to him.
Yeah. And you just mentioned before about Thailand and we already talked about Hong Kong, and obviously you've traveled around to Macau, to China, to other places with ONE FC.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you got a bit of benefit from as far as training and whatnot, traveling around and trying different gyms, different sort of styles around the world?
Yeah. I was sponsored by Fairtex. So I used to train there every year. Yeah. And I was fortunate enough to fight under Mr. Wong, the owner of Fairtex. He drove me to the stadium personally. So I think I had they had a lot riding on. My manager was like, fuck, Adrian, don't you fail or we'll both be floating down the river, you know. But
Yeah.
it was really cool, man, you know. So yeah, with him I trained in Japan at Yoshida Dojo and at Tsuyoshi Kasaka's gym. I was sponsored for a while. I lived there for 2 weeks training there. You know, yeah, I like traveling to fight. When I travel, it's good to be in that fight environment. Like, I'm not holidaying. So, you know, one thing is when I travel, like I've been to China and all these places, I don't sightsee. I don't make the most of it because I'm in the zone for fighting. When fighting's over, I just want to get back to my family. I don't want to spend another second in where I'm at. I just wanted to go back to normal. But man, I've been fortunate enough, you know, with Legend. I fought in Hong Kong, fought in Macau. With one championship, I've fought in Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, China. That's it. I fought in Japan. I fought in Cage Force. That was the first caged event before Dream. I fought in Cage Force 1. So I fought there in early 2000s. Yeah, man. I've got to travel around a bit.
Man, I also wanted to ask you a question, which I probably should have popped in earlier. I think when I look at the way you fight, man, you've probably one of the most intense fighters that I've ever seen, especially from our sort of area in Oceania, etc. Like you're up there with the top of the most vicious, aggressive sort of fighters. You know, talking to you now, you're like a chilled out sort of guy. What is it that makes you that sort of go forward, want to fight, don't accept people trying to sidestep and move around? You really just want to get face to face and throw down. Like, what is it that makes you into that sort of fighter?
Man, I like when I was growing up, man, I was really bad at sport. I'm just not gifted at fucking anything. My little brother, mate, he can do everything. Throw a ball, kick a ball, climb a tree, chop it, fucking, he can do anything. And I was just shit. And my dad wanted me to be in the first 15 because he was a first 15 footy player. And for an Asian guy in St. Joey's in Sydney, that's pretty big, a big mark. So, man, he wanted me to play footy. And, man, I was just shit. I wasn't good at anything, mate. I'm not good at ball sport. I'm just not good. And when I found fighting, like Kung Fu, that was something that I could do still as a team, but it's on me. And, you know, that goes back to when I started fighting professionally. And at first it was all fun. I would have done it for free and fun. And then I started realizing people my weight don't have the same power as a bigger man does. So probably to my detriment a lot of times when they hit me, because they don't have any sting in their punches, I just treat it with contempt. And, you know, I guess that's where my fight name came from, Hunter. Because I would just hunt them down and just trade with them until one of us drops. And I'm luckily enough in 20 years, I haven't been dropped. I think I've been knocked over, but I haven't been physically dropped and out. And I don't know, man, it just come out, you know, the better I got, the more experience my opponents got, and makes them harder to finish. It sort of added to my showmanship to fight the way I do, and that's how I enjoy it. You know, I'm a bit of a slow starter. Sometimes getting cracked in the head really wakes me up. And yeah, man, I don't know, mate. I just evolved that way.
So, like I said, you really have that intensity and strength about you, the way you fight. And so I wanted to lead on to like as far as fight psychology, like how do you prepare or how do you go about getting ready for opponents? Do you face like fear in yourself, etc.? And how do you kind of get around that?
Yeah, man, you know, like all fighters face it. Some people say they don't, and it's bullshit because, you know, like when you get matched with a fight, it's half the time you're only thinking about this other person. It's fucking weird that they occupy, you know, your headspace. And I'm just thinking of just fucking destroying them because they said yes to fighting me. And, you know, it fucks with you. Sometimes you're trying to go to sleep and then you think about them and next minute your heart rate's up and then you just want to get up and train or something. And I've had no sports psychology. You know, I just enjoy testing myself. I think that's why I had my first fight to begin with. You know, I could have stayed in my little Kung Fu bubble and said I could beat everyone in the whole world if they fought me, but they never would because I don't want to kill them. Like, I'm just so tired of hearing that story. I used to get tired of hearing the stories on the bar stool of people saying that they could have done this, they should have done that. If they did this, I'd do this. And I'm thinking, fuck, I want to see if I actually could do it. And you know, when I was growing up, when I'm watching people telling high stories of all the things that they should have, would have, could have, and they never did.
Yeah.
I thought, fuck, that's not going to be me. So, you know, when I fight, man, like, fuck, I've had so many fights. I enjoy the process, but that adrenaline feeling is what we fight for. And, you know, I like testing myself, but if I'm just as fucking nervous now, or even more so than I used to be back then, you know, there's a lot on the line, man. I got a family, I got a business. When you're young, man, you just don't give a fuck what's going to happen because you don't care. I mean, I was fighting for $250. Like, you know, I never knew I'd be making a living off it 20 years later, you know?
Yeah, it's quite amazing, right? Yeah, and I get would it be right to say from what you're saying, you don't feel like you're like maybe so gifted athletically and from what you see, you're a very successful athlete, you're very good, and it's from determination and hard work. When you say you probably see it in the gym too, like people that are consistent and have that consistency and drive and intestinal fortitude may come out on top from someone that has their natural ability because they're going to keep progressing and keep driving and keep getting better. Whereas someone who's just got the natural ability without the drive, you know, can't necessarily achieve the same thing, right?
Mate, that's 100%. You know, you nailed it on the head there. Consistency is the key. Some people just think they know it all already. And like I run a big gym, but I don't act to all my students like I know everything. I'm still open and I still train every day. Like I train myself in the day. I still actively train in my classes. I don't take the bench and just give orders, and I don't ever tell anyone to do anything I wouldn't do myself. And I think coming up too, when I was young, even if I was out partying on the weekend, Monday, I'm always back in the gym. No excuses, mate. I just had no excuses. My birthday, my family's birthday, fucking special occasions, I train no matter what's going to happen. And, you know, I was cabinet making for, over 10 years or 14 years. That all revolved around my training too. I didn't take a job on that would affect my afternoon training sessions. I still at lunchtime, I'd go and hit pads during lunchtime. So, you know, I've always dedicated to the sport. And, you know, if I'd known back then I was going to run a gym, I probably would have done it sooner because I ran a cabinet making business for most of my fighting career. And it was only after signing with one championship and, you know, the pay I was making, I realized I had to choose, am I a fighter or am I a cabinet maker? So, you know, I chose to run my gym. And man, now, you know, we're one of the most successful gyms in Australia. You know, I know a lot of guys around Brisbane try and copy us and they're not doing too well. And yeah, man, that's it. Fuck.
So what a life. Just give us a quick description of the gym, where it is, etc., for anyone that's interested in training with you.
Man, we're integrated MMA HQ in Stafford, Brisbane. So we're 8 kilometers out of the city. I've got a 450 square meter gym inside. You know, we got 20 grand of zebra mats on the floor. We got a ring cage, showers. I mean, we got one of the most premier gyms around. You know, I got a lot of fighters here, a lot of public members, and everyone's cool, mate. Like, you know, even when I had UFC guys here, no one's allowed to walk around bigger than the next person. Everyone has to help each other, and we're all the same. You know, I don't act like I'm better than my students, and I don't let any of my champions act like they're better than anyone under them. So I think that's why we're such a good team. And, you know, it has caused a bit of jealousy, especially around Brisbane, with a few of my former training partners that have left. But, mate, that's how it is, man. They can try and copy us, but they're never going to emulate us, you know? Yeah.
It's great. Adrian, we've been on for a little while, so I'll finish up here. But it's been really great talking to you, and I feel honoured to share some time with you and hear some of your stories, etc. Hopefully, in the future, we could maybe sit down again and have a talk about some of the fights that you've experienced and the people you fought, etc. I'm interested in that, but we're just sort of running out of a little bit of time. But yeah, thank you so much.
Mate, thanks a lot for your time, man. And, you know, giving me the time to tell some of my stories. I mean, like other people, they've enjoyed some of the other podcasts, and it depends what tangent you want to go off as to what stories we start telling. And
Yep.
I've got some really cool ones, man. I got some really good ones in New Guinea. I got some pretty cool ones in Japan. I've had a lot of experiences, mate, that have worked for me and against me. And you know, I'd be honored any time to share them with you guys if the people want to hear it.
Great. Sounds perfect, man.
All right, mate.
Out with Adrian the Hunter Pang. Thank you very much, man.
All right, man. Thank you, guys. Cheers.